Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. Good afternoon. It is some time of the day. It is Wednesday. It is our WCC Wednesday. And today we are talking about the Wisconsin Council of Churches Community Investment Program. It is something I have just learned a whole bunch about, and I'm super excited to learn some more. The Wisconsin Council of Churches has a program where people who are part of the WCC, whether you are adjudicatory, whether you are a church, whether you are an individual who is a part of that church, can invest between $2,000 and $25,000 in our community investment program. And then we take kind of that pool of money and loan it out to community development financial institutions, or CDFIs, around the state to help do good in the community. And today we are joined by Forward Community Investments, who is one of the CDFIs that we invest in through our community investment program. There's a lot of community and investing and that sort of thing going on. And so I am joined by Tom today. And so Tom, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate the time to speak with you and appreciate all the support that the Wisconsin Council of Churches provides for forward community investments in our work. My name is Tom Behnke. I'm the manager of grant programs and communications at Forward Community Investments.
Awesome. So tell me about what Forward Community Investments is. Like, as I said, we have the CIP, the Community Investment Program, and we get all this money and then we give you money.
Sure.
What happens to that? What does Forward Community Investments do?
Yeah, so we are a CDFI. We're registered through the Department of Treasury as a community developmental financial institution. So we are one of 24 CDFIs around the state here in Wisconsin, but we are the only specific CDFI that works with nonprofit organizations. So kind of maybe what is a CDFI? We are a financial institution, right? So we work and kind of fill that gap, like I said, working with nonprofit organizations that traditional financial institutions would deem as a risky borrower. So for instance, a nonprofit organization would go to a traditional financial institution like your BMO Harris banks, your Associated banks. Nothing against those organizations, just that's kind of the traditional financial institutions. And a lot of those organizations are investors in us, actually, just like Wisconsin Council of Churches. But like I said, they would seem a loan with a nonprofit organization as risky and maybe not take that risk. And we come in and we don't see that as a risk. We see that as a necessity and something that's going to provide an invaluable service to the community. So we lend them money, lend these nonprofit organizations money to build new facilities, expand programs, rolling lines of credit and things like that to expand those programs and things like that. And we make those loans and then we get that money back, and it's like a circle. So we take that money, we lend it out, they pay it back, and then we're able to do it all over again and kind of lend like that. We are a statewide organization, so we are in 40 of the 72 counties. We have done projects in 40 of the 72 counties. A majority of the projects that we do are kind of either in Madison, Milwaukee, or around the state, and that's just due to the amount of nonprofit organizations in Madison and Milwaukee. There are quite a few of them. So, we do that. Our bread and butter is our lending, but we also do some granting as well as technical assistance. So what we have learned through our over 26 years of lending is that if you don't have a strong financial foundation, you're not going to be able to pay us back or even go beyond what your mission and vision is. So we step in and help folks and organizations, figure out how to create a budget, how to make sure everything's running, how to make sure to tie that budget to your mission and vision, how to work better with your boards and things like that. So, we do quite a bit kind of wraparound services and things like that. We've done projects from community facilities, which are, like your, your kind of boys and girls clubs, your Goodman community centers, things like that. Affordable housing. We work with a lot of organizations across the state. One of our borrowers is the Wisconsin Partnership for Housing Development, and they do a lot of work all around the state with affordable housing. We also work in healthcare too. So we work with community behavioral health centers, as well as rural healthcare and things like that. And then healthy food. We've done some loans to a few co-ops around the state, all the way up in Ashland, down here in Madison, and things like that. We've since we've been around, we've lent over $85 million, and we've only defaulted on 200,000. So that's a pretty good track record that we show that we can make that money work for the community. And I kind of want to bring it back to that first part where I talked about kind of the traditional financial institutions and them seeing some of these nonprofit organizations risky as a borrower. We don't want to be the lender for the long haul, right? We want to get them to that point where they can go to those traditional financial institutions and get more money and apply for larger loans to expand their services. So that's kind of what FCI does, and probably a short little 4-minute segment there.
Well, and I love what you talked about of like, it's not just a loan, but like a loan plus the technical assistance. So I got a little introduction to the whole program, or like our community investment program earlier today. And like this idea that it's not just about the money, but it's about building capacity and building organizations and people and communities, that it's more than just money.
Absolutely.
That is.
Absolutely. They got to keep the lights on. And a lot of these organizations that we work with are really great at providing that service, but they don't know necessarily how to put together that budget, or even have the means to hire somebody who would be able to do that. So, that's definitely something that we have learned that needs to happen.
So can you share a story about the impact of one of your loans? Because it's sometimes really great to have all these really huge numbers, and also like, what does this look like on kind of a micro level?
Sure. So there's a couple that I had written down that I'd like to talk about. One of them kind of exemplifies the life cycle of an organization that we have worked with. So Operation Fresh Start. So they're based here in Madison. Not sure if everybody knows about them or what they do. So they're an
on the street from my house.
All right. So they are an organization that works with disenfranchised youth, justice-involved youth, who college or secondary school really isn't something that they're looking to do. So they put together a program where they teach and mentor these youth and teens in the trades. So a lot of construction, electrical, carpentry, flooring, sheetrocking, roofing, and things like that. So they came to us looking for a loan to purchase house, to refurbish, sell, and then keep the cycle going. So while they're refurbishing the house, they're actually teaching these youth the trades and how they can be trained in those trades, how they can get a family sustaining job, living wage job, and things like that. So we were like, wow, this is great. This is a great program. We're going to help you out. So we lent them money to purchase their first 2 houses. So they were able to purchase those houses. They were able to flip them for a little bit of a profit, which allowed them to purchase more homes. So it kept growing and it kept growing to that point where they got to their credit history was really good, that they could go to the traditional financial institutions. So they were able to seek higher loans, get more houses, and keep the program going. So something as an investor in like WCC, they saw the value in the work that we did and actually invested in us. And we were able to take the loans or the money that they invested in us and make those loans to other organizations. So it kind of speaks to all that whole circle of they were here, they needed help to get to here, they got to here, and then they saw that where the value in an organization like us and putting that money back in, and really helped out the organization. And Brianna just spoke about they just actually purchased a brand new, beautiful headquarters, which actually it now allows them to do some of the training in-house. It's right on Milwaukee Street here in Madison. Actually, it's that way. Sorry, I didn't know where my directionals were. But that's kind of a really good example of, an organization, that saw, that we worked with them to get to where they needed to be, and then they invested back in us. There's other projects too. We actually just closed on a loan for an organization out of Milwaukee called the Hmong American Women's Association. And they do a lot of work with mentoring of female youth in the Hmong community in Milwaukee. We were able to help them purchase one of the Pabst mansions in Milwaukee, and that is going to be their new headquarters. That's going to be their new administrative offices. That's going to be where they can provide services. That's where they're going to provide mentoring and things like that. And then lastly, another one that just popped in my head was in the healthcare realm, that the rural healthcare realm, which is really, really, it's rural, right? So there are a lot of healthcare deserts up north. And we actually worked with the Marshfield Clinical Health System to help fund a new facility in Ladysmith, which is up north. So, that speaks to kind of a couple different types of the projects that we do, as well as all across the state.
Nice. I love that. Just like this, I mean, each of those is such an in-depth story, and to imagine that you guys are doing that all over the state.
That's, and that's one of the coolest things about my job, right? Is seeing those and being able to visit, that Pabst mansion and see their plans and their visions for it, and just seeing what an amazing organization, HAWA, Hmong American Women's Association, that's their acronym, right? We live in a world of acronyms. The work that they're doing and what an impact that's going to be to the youth, female youth in the Hmong community in Milwaukee, and then up in Marshfield too. Or up in Ladysmith, excuse me, for Marshfield. That fills a very, very vital need.
So one of the things that FCI is really committed to is racial equity. And that's something that's near and dear to the council's heart as well. Can you talk a little bit about that commitment and how what that looks like in your organization?
Yeah. So back in 2013, not everybody, but I'm sure if you are aware of the commitment to racial equity and things like that, the Race to Equity report was released in 2013. And it wasn't good for Wisconsin. It wasn't good for anybody. Saying that we were, one of the more segregated states in the country and things like that. So at that point, we made it a goal that we were only going to work with nonprofit organizations that are working to reduce racial and socioeconomic disparities. We did that working internally, diversifying our staff, diversifying our board, bringing in members from all around the state, different communities and things like that. So in order to be eligible for a loan or a grant or any technical assistance, they have to explain to us their commitment to reducing those racial and socioeconomic disparities. So we have committees that go through the organization's mission and vision and things like that, and make sure that it's a fit for FCI as well as for them to make that commitment. So we really only work with organizations that are working to reduce those racial and socioeconomic disparities.
Great. So if folks wanted to get involved or want to learn more about FCI, I'll share in a moment how you can get involved through the WCC, but if they want to learn more from you, what do they need to do?
Sure. So, our website, forwardci.org, and I can send all this information to Brianna.
And I will drop it in the comments.
Perfect. That's where, we have a lot of our stories and things like that. You can donate funds as well. You can also become an individual investor. That's one of the cool things about another cool thing about what we do is that, we do have investors, huge investors, right? I had mentioned those financial institutions like your BMO Harris banks and stuff like that. They invest in us too, but we also have individuals who can invest with FCI at $1,000, and you can, be part of that change. You're not going to get rich doing it. It's not like you're investing in the stock market or anything, but you are going to get a competitive return and interest rate of 2%, which is more than your traditional CDs or your any savings account or anything like that. So I'm the individual who works with the investors and can help you get set up, answer any questions you have about paperwork, about where the funds go. I can send you all of our fund prospectus that has numbers and numbers and charts, to kind of teach you a little bit more about that. We're also all over our social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, that you can keep up to date with us on that. Like us on Facebook so that we're in your timeline, in your news feed, so that when we post something, you can hear about us. And just reach out. Like I said, we're a small but mighty team. And I wouldn't have it any other way that I pretty much get to touch base with almost all of the individual investors. So, and like I said, I'll pass that all information on to Brianna and she can throw that in the chat and we can go from there.
And if you wanted to, another option is going through the Wisconsin Council of Churches. We have a little higher of an entry point of $2,000.
Sure.
But if you invest in our community investment program, Forward Community Investments is one of the, and I was going to look up the number and I forgot, but we have a handful of, we have multiple CDFIs that we invest in as an organization. And so kind of a similar process of you put your money in and then you would get a return on it as well. And I will drop the link for our community investment program in the chat as well.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. I have learned, I've learned a lot about, including about organizations down the street from me.
Right.
Never know where people are working.
Right. The money's got to come from somewhere. And, we're happy to fill that niche. As Brianna and I were talking about, CDFIs in general, before I started working at FCI about 7 years ago, I had no idea that CDFIs existed, and they do. And thank God they exist, because they provide an amazing service and just do great work for the community, work that needs to be done.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Of course.